Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopi Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gorangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudire. Bolo Shri Radhe Golokananda Bhagwan ki jai. Bolo Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Rina ji. Hare Krishna
everyone.
Hello Moon, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna. So Ravi. So hopefully everyone had a nice weekend. We are back on Monday. Back to work. So Srimad Bhagavatam, हम लोग last week we were reading Canto 3 and Chapter 28. Yeah. So Canto 3 हम लोगों ने Canto 1 and 2 दो books complete कर ली है. Canto 3 is almost about to be completed. I think there are around 34 or 35 adhyayas, and we have completed 28. Yeah. So Canto 3 about the status quo, and if you remember in Canto 3, Vidur Mahatma meets Maitreya Muni, yeah, at Ganga Tat, and then Vidur Mahatma is asking all these questions about the universe and the avatar of Lord Vishnu's, and then Maitreya Muni is answering all the questions. Yeah, that's where we are. And so if we just continue, and as you can see, there are 12 books. Yeah, like you see, there are 12 books in Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, the 10th book is the most important one. That's what they say. But it's also mentioned that you have to read the first 9 to really read the 10th. Okay, otherwise you are really not eligible. That's what they say technically. So first we have to read those 9, then we can get to the 10th. Yeah. And as you know, there how many shlokas are there in Srimad Bhagavatam? So all of us remember now, right? How many?
18,000.
18,000 shlokas, yeah? And 332 chapters. Like in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there are 700 shlokas, 18 chapters. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 332 chapters and 18,000 shlokas. So we are on Canto 3. And as you know, last few chapters, we have been reading about Kapil Muni giving transcendental instructions to Mother Dehuti. Yeah. And in last chapter, Kapil Muni was explaining how to execute devotional service, like how you are going to do the bhakti really. Yeah. And then before that, he was explaining how the material nature has been formed, and then how the liberated soul can still be devoted, surrendered to Lord Shri Krishna, even though surrounded by the material nature. Yeah. So now we'll start reading chapter 29, which is about explanation of devotional service by Lord Kapil. Yeah, Kapil Muni, as we know, is none other than avatar of Lord Vishnu, and he is giving transcendental knowledge to Mother Dehuti. So he's going to explain what is devotional service. Yeah, so very important chapter. We are going to understand what is bhakti. Yeah, so we'll start with the shlok first. Anilji.
जी हाँ Devahutirvacha Lakshanam Mahadadinam Prakriteha Purushasya cha Swarupam Lakshate Nisham Yena Tatpar Marthikam Yatha Sankheshu Katitam Yan Moolam Tat Prachakshate Bhakti Yoga Me Margam Bruhi Vistarasha Prabho. Coming down a little slow. Could you please scroll down? Yeah, it's coming. Okay. Devahuti inquired, "My dear Lord, you have already very scientifically described the symptoms of the total material nature and characteristics of the spirit according to the Sankhya system of philosophy. Now I shall request you to explain the path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Hare Krishna."
Hare Krishna, yeah. So if you remember Mother Devahuti, she is daughter of whom? Devahuti is daughter of who? If you remember?
Shambhu Manu.
Shambhu Manu, yeah. She is daughter of Shambhu Manu, who is supposed to be the first Manu in this day of Brahma. Yeah. In one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. And Shambhu Manu is the first Manu. And Devahuti is daughter of Shambhu Manu. And she got married to whom?
Kardamuni.
Kardamuni. Yeah. So Devahuti got married to Kardamuni. And Kardamuni, of course, did meditation like for a long, long time. And then they had daughters who got married to all the rishis, and then Lord Vishnu himself appeared to Kardamuni and said that he will take birth to Kapil Muni and to Kardamuni and Mother Devahuti. So Kapil Muni then appeared as Lord Vishnu appeared as Kapil Muni to Mother Devahuti. So then Kardamuni has taken sannyas, right? He has, he's already so advanced. And then he told Kapil Muni to give transcendental knowledge to Mother Devahuti. So that's what is going on right now. So Devahuti is now asking, "My dear Lord," yeah. So Kapil Muni is son of Devahuti, but she is addressing him as "my dear Lord" because she knows that he is avatar of Lord Vishnu. Yeah. So, and she's saying that you already explained everything about the material nature and about the spirit in the Sankhya system, and this system is known as Sankhya system of philosophy. Now she is requesting to explain the path of devotional service, and at the same time she is saying that path of devotional service, which is the ultimate end of all philosophical systems. Yeah, that is the highest end. It says here, Bhakti Yoga Me Marga Bruhir Vistarashah Prabho. Yeah, and that is part of the Sankheshu Katitam Gyan, but it is the Yan Moolam Tat Prachakshate. Yani Moolam is the topmost, right? The real root of all the philosophical systems. So that is what Mother Devahuti is asking. So we are going to read this, Ravi.
In this 29th chapter, the glories of devotional service are elaborately explained, and the influence of time on the conditioned soul is also described. The purpose of elaborately describing the influence of time is to detach the conditioned soul from his material activities, which are considered to be simply a waste of time. In the previous chapter, material nature, the spirit, and the Supreme Lord or Supreme Soul are analytically studied. And in this chapter, the principle of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service, the execution of activities in the eternal relationship between the living entities and the personality of God ahead are explained. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So clearly it's mentioned what is being explained. But the important part is saying is that the influence of time on the conditioned soul, right? So we are all conditioned souls and we have influence of time, right? That's why there's a fear of death, because everybody has a limited time, right? That's Kal. And Kal is nothing but the external manifestation of Lord Vishnu himself. Yeah. So in this chapter, that is kind of being described. And why it is described, it's saying so that detach the conditioned soul from his material activities. So to really explain the conditioned soul that all these activities are really material, and it's even mentioned that all this is a waste of time. Yeah. So the real time which is being spent is in the devotional service. Bhakti Yoga is what is being mentioned here. Yeah. And let's just see what is the Sankhya philosophy here. Munmun.
Sankhya philosophy is the analytical study of all existence. One has to understand everything by examining its nature and characteristics. This is called acquirement of knowledge. But one should not simply acquire knowledge without reaching the goal of life or the basic principle for acquiring knowledge. Bhakti Yoga. If we give up Bhakti Yoga and simply busy ourselves in the analytical study of the nature of things as they are, then the result will be practically nil. It is stated in the Bhagavatam that such engagement is something like husking a paddy. There is no use beating the husk if the grain has already been removed. By the scientific study of material nature, the living entity, and the super soul, one has to understand the basic principle of devotional service to the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So it is mentioned that if there is a devotional service, there has to be two people, right? So one is the Bhakt and the other is the God, right? So the two have to exist. Yeah. And that is the relationship between the living entity and the super soul, is what is being mentioned here. So let's read the next slok. Rinaji.
विरागो येन पुरुषो भगवन् सर्वतो भवेत् आचक्ष्व जीवलोकस्य विविधा मम संसृतेः. Devahuti continued, "My dear Lord, please also describe in detail, both for me and for people in general, the continual process of birth and death, for by hearing of such calamities, we may become detached from the activities of this material world." Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Rinaji. Right? So it says again, Devahuti asking Kapil Muni that please tell me more about devotional service. And here says like Sansriti means is the continual process of birth and death. So which we all know, like we are going through the process of birth and death. And she's asking all this for the benefit of us so that we can understand and then we can become detached from the activities of the material world. Yeah? And it's actually a nice purpose. So let's read this, Sachin.
This verse, the word samsritihi is very important. Shreyashriti means prosperous path of advancement towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And samsritihi means the continued journey on the path of birth and death towards the darkest region of material existence. People who have no knowledge of this material world, God, and their actual intimate relationship with Him are actually going to the darkest region of material existence in the name of progress in the material advancement of civilization. To enter the darkest region of material existence means to enter into a species of life other than the human species. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's saying is to enter the darkest region means a species of life other than human species, right? And this is no secret, right? We can see around all of us how many different species exist, right? And we already know like some 8.4 million different births entity takes before getting the human body, right? So that's why the human body is so precious. And I think that's what it's saying, that people who have no knowledge of this material world and God and their actual intimate relationship, what is happening is there is no idea about anything and we just keep on doing our work and all that. right, in the name of enjoying life or progressing in civilization. But really what's happening is we are going through this samsriti, which is the continued journey on the path of birth and death. And because of that, we get into so many different bodily forms and we have no idea about that, right? Is what is being mentioned here. So just continue reading this, Tarun.
Ignorant men do not know that after this life, they are completely under the grip of material nature and will be offered a life which may not be very congenial. How a living entity gets different kinds of bodies will be explained in the next chapter. This continual change of bodies in birth and death is called samsara. Devahuti requests her glorious son, Kapila Muni, to explain about this continued journey to impress upon the conditioned souls that they are undergoing a path of degradation by not understanding the path of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, this is the most important thing mentioned here, right? Like Devahuti is asking Kapil Muni to explain the devotional service, the Bhakti Yoga, right? To understand that they are actually going through a path of degradation, right? Because birth after birth, you get different types of bodies. So we'll go to the next shlok. Ajay.
कालस्येश्वर रूपस्य परेषां च परस्थिते स्वरूपं बत कुर्वन्ति यद्धेतु कुशलः जनाः. Please also describe eternal time, which is representation of your form and by whose influence people in general engage the performance of pious activities. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so Mother Devahuti is saying, also tell me about the eternal time. Yeah, Kal. Yeah, and which is of course Lord's representation. And then what is the impact on the people? It says here, like from the date of the birth of the body, the influence of death is also acting, right? So as soon as somebody is born, the influence of death is also acting. And the advancement of age entails the influence of time on the body. As we can all see, right? We go through so many different changes, right, within our own body as the time progresses, right? So if a man is 30 or 50 years old, then the influence of time has already devoured 30 or 50 years of the duration of his life, right? Basically what is being mentioned is the time is limited, right? So every time we celebrate our birthday, but that means that many years have already gone from the life, yeah? And it's important to understand the nature, the material nature, the soul and the relationship and the devotional service is what is being mentioned here. All right. Yeah, and it says actually, but actually as stated in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot get relief from the chain of birth and death, even if he goes to the highest planet, Brahmalok, because the influence of time is present everywhere within this material world. In the spiritual world, however, the time factor has no influence, right? So as we have seen, there's a spiritual world, there's a material world, right? Spiritual world, there is no time, right? Everything is absolute. There is no relative concept and there is no time concept. Material world, there is a time concept, and what's being mentioned is not just for our human being, but even Lord Brahma, right? In Brahmalok, there is a time factor, right? So even though Lord Brahma's age, do you remember what is the age of Lord Brahma? Remember what is the expected age of Lord Brahma? Like for human being in Kali Yuga, it's 100 years, supposedly. What is the age of Lord Brahma?
4,032 billion years.
Yeah, so that is just one day of Lord Brahma, right? So one day of Lord Brahma is 4,032,000,000 years, just one day, right? So the age of Lord Brahma is supposed to be 311 trillion years. Yeah, so 311 trillion years of the solar year, excuse me, is supposed to be the age of Lord Brahma. And it said that excuse me, it is mentioned that in this Lord Brahma's Yuga, his half of the age has been passed. So around 150 trillion years has been passed, and which also means there are 7 Manus have taken birth. In this day of Brahma, also the 7 Manus have taken a birth, right? There are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma. So even the age of Brahma, it's mentioned that half of the age has been passed. But the point which is being mentioned is that, right, the fear of time or the influence of time is present in this world, even in the highest lok, even Lord Brahma's lok, which is the highest lok. Yeah, Lord Satyalok, right? Lord Brahma, who got birth from Nabhi of Lord Vishnu. Yeah. Munmun?
लोकस्य मिथ्या भीमतेर्चक्षुष शिरं प्रस्तुतस्य तमस्त्यानाश्रे शान्तस्य कर्म स्वनुविद्यया धिया त्वमाविरासि किल योग भास्करम. My dear Lord, you are just like the sun, or you illuminate the darkness of all the conditional life of the living entities. Because their eyes of knowledge are not open, they are sleeping eternally in that darkness without your shelter, and therefore they are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions of their material activities, and they appear to be very fatigued. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so Mother Devhuti is saying, my dear Lord, which is Kapil Muni, you are just like the sun. Yeah, that is the Yoga Bhaskara hai. Yeah, who can give light to all the conditioned souls, because we are all in the darkness of the conditional life. Yeah, we don't really understand much, and we just keep going on our work. So that's why, because you are falsely engaged by the actions and reactions. So as we know the law of karma also, right? We are engaged in all the material activities. So, so Mother Devhuti is asking to explain that, right? That actually it's good purport. So I think again we'll just read some of it here. Rinaji?
It appears that Srimati Devhuti, the glorious mother of Lord Kapil Dev, is very compassionate for the regrettable condition of people in general, who, not knowing the goal of life, are sleeping in the darkness of illusion. It is the general feeling of Vaishnava or devotee of the Lord that he should awaken them. Similarly, Devhuti is requesting her glorious son to illuminate the lives of the conditioned souls, so that their most regrettable conditional life may be ended. The Lord is described herein as Yoga Bhaskar, the son of the system of all yoga. Devhuti has already requested her glorious son to describe Bhakti Yoga, and the Lord has described Bhakti Yoga as the ultimate yoga system. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. Not knowing the goal of life, right? I think each of us, we ask, like, what's the goal in your life, right? Is it somebody wants to be a millionaire, billionaire, somebody wants to be whatever, chief executive, whatever, right? That's really not the goal of human life, right? It says the goal of human life is really get out of this darkness of illusion, right? To really be in the Bhakti Yoga so that we can establish our connection back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Yeah, and we need to establish that connection so that we can get out of this, the birth and death cycle, as we saw in the previous slok, and then go back to the spiritual world. That is why the human life is so important, the path of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, it says here, like, we invent how many processes to adjust this fatigue condition, but we fail and we remain confused. The only path for mitigating this fatigue in the struggle for existence is the path of devotional service, or the path of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So, and as you can see, Maitre watch. Do you know who Maitre Muni is? Yeah. Who is telling Srimad Bhagavatam to Mahatma Vidur, right? If you remember. So we had the whole story where Mahatma Vidur goes to meet Maitreya Muni at Ganga Tat, and Maitreya Muni is what is responding to Mahatma Vidur's questions. So actually we'll pause here today because it's also beginning of Navratri this weekend, if you remember. So also we had Gudi Padwa. So beginning of the new year, yeah. And it's Navratri till Ram Navami, which is on Sunday. Coming up Sunday is Ram Navami, yeah. So we are going to see some artis at Vaishnav Devi, the live which happened today actually. So we'll see today's Kirtans at Vaishnav Devi. We'll see that whole week. And then we'll see you tomorrow at the same time, 9:50. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
अथ दुर्गापद्धराष्टक
नमस्ते शरण्ये शिवे सानुकम्बे नमस्ते जगद्व्यापिके विश्वरूपे नमस्ते जगद्वन्द्यपादारविन्दे नमस्ते जगत्तारिणि त्राहि दुर्गे नमस्ते जगच्चिन्त्यमानस्वरूपे नमस्ते महायोगी विज्ञानरूपे नमस्ते नमस्ते सदानन्दरूपे नमस्ते जगत्तारिणि त्राहि दुर्गे अनाथस्य दीनस्य तृष्णातुरस्य भयातस्य भेदस्य बद्धस्य जन्तोः त्वमेका गतिर्देवि निस्तारकर्त्री नमस्ते जगत्तारिणि त्राहि दुर्गे अरण्ये रणे दारुणे शत्रुमध्ये जले संकटे राजगेहे प्रभाते त्वमेका गतिर्देवि निस्तारयेत् नमस्ते जगत्तारिणि त्राहि दुर्गे अपारे महादुस्तरे दन्तघोरे विभत्सागरे भजतां देहभाजा त्वमेका गतिर्देवि निस्तारनौका नमस्ते जगत्तारिणि त्राहि दुर्गे नमः शण्डिके चण्डदुर्दण्डनीला समुत्थण्डिता खण्डलाशे